we're also joined as well now by Steve Palazzolo, 33rd teams. He's with the 33rd team and also with Check the Mic podcast. Steve Palazzolo, who for years and years was with Pro Football Focus, and he was down at the Combine. Got a lot going on, but Steve, thanks for joining us. What were your thoughts about the Combine? First of all, got any generalizations for us?
Yeah, a lot of steak last week. Ate a lot of steak.
Right.
That was good.
Yeah.
Good steakhouses. Enjoyed that. I love the entire week. It is the entire NFL within, 2 blocks of each other. There's always a lot going on. As far as that's off the field, though, like as far as the workouts go, fascinating run. I think fewer players are working out than ever. You're not seeing agility drills, which have been some of the best drills when it comes to projecting players and modeling players at the next level. So that's a little unfortunate that we're not seeing that. And I know the NFL Network was pushing, hey, fastest D-line group and fastest linebackers and fastest safeties. But it's, because anybody who ran over 4.5 didn't even run. So there's a little bit of selection bias in there. So it felt athletic, but a lot of players not running. We'll see if they end up running at their pro day or if they just sit and don't work out this year.
Now, with all that said, Steve, was there a player, though, that kind of did jump off to you where you went, wow, what a physical phenom this guy is?
Well, I'll go Bill specific. I thought free safety Dylan Thieneman from Oregon, given the need that the Bills have had trying to attack the safety position or a versatile safety position over the last couple of years, his athleticism shows up on film at Oregon, showed up on film at Purdue, and then shows up at the Combine. I mean, he's the type of guy, when the ball's in the air, he closes quickly. Great acceleration, great second gear as far as range goes at the safety position. Now, he may have tested too well to the point where people are already talking about him, late teens to the Minnesota Vikings. I just thought for a player who's seen as a late first, early second round pick, it just confirmed to me, hey, if he was there for Buffalo, I think he's very much in the mix in the back end of the first round.
And we always talk about, particularly in the first round, the more predictable picks at the top of the round. And the first round kind of centers around, for most of us, money spots like the wide receiver, the offensive tackle, the edge rusher, quarterbacks, obviously. But this is also a draft where guys like safeties, like Thieneman, you can get a difference-making player at a spot that's not notoriously a fantastic, big marquee, like a guard. You could get maybe a Hall of Fame guard mid to late first round because it's a guard, right? Or a safety. It's not a corner. It's not a lockdown corner, but a safety makes a difference. That's kind of where the Bills sit at that 26 slot, where you can get maybe a great player at a non, quote-unquote, money spot. Is that how you see it?
I do. I think it's one of the stories of the draft. It's funny because when you're going through, even in the top 10, when you're trying to fill out number 2 for the Jets or number 3 for the Cardinals, there's not like, remember there was the year where number 7 off the board was Penei Sewell, and it's Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase and Micah Parsons is in that draft, and you're getting a blue chip player at a premium position, and it's not just premium because we like those positions, it's where the NFL pays, and when you hit on one of those players, it is a massive advantage when those guys are making 20 plus million a year or whatever it may be, 25 million, 30 million now, 40 million. And in the top 10, you don't have any of those clean players at those positions, but you're like, hey, what about Caleb Downs at safety? What about Sonny Styles at linebacker? Can you take him? Can you take Jeremiah Love at running back? And then they become one of the highest paid players at their position on their rookie contract. So you're making sure you're weighing those financial decisions. But I do think there's a sweet spot in the middle of the first round or the back end of the top 10 even, where you're like, there's a lot of good football players here. And I do think that sprinkles into the late first, in that, picks 15 to 75, say, there are some really good football players. Bills obviously fit right in that mix. And you're okay. Like the positional value thing matters much less as you get down the bottom end of the first. If you can get a starting guard, if you can get a starting safety or a linebacker, you are more than happy to do that if you're Buffalo in the back end of the first.
The offensive line, the guard spots come up a couple of times already here in this conversation. Look, the Bills are sitting in a spot where they've got 2 starting offensive linemen that are going to be free agents, Connor McGovern, David Edwards, the center, the guard. What's this offensive line group look like on the interior if they do have to replace one or both of those guys?
Yeah, I mean, preferably just they have to replace one. You guys would know a little bit better than me as far as how close they are, how likely that is. You'd rather not have to go with, replace 2/5 of your offensive line. Buffalo's offensive line continuity over the last few years, really an underrated part of their success. They have not had to deal with this over the last couple of years, other than fill in a Cyrus Torrance in the second round. They haven't had to do it that often. So if they could lock up one of those guys, I think that's preferred. I still think you want to go the free agent route. I mentioned Isaac Seumalo as a really good stopgap. He's 33 years old, battled injuries, but just a good, dependable player, probably on the cheap. And so when you're talking about, you can't fill literally every spot with a 4-year player that's has upside. So Seumalo feels like a really good player at guard. There are good starting guards out there. Dylan Parham from the Raiders. Players who are out there who are going to be a little bit cheaper, I think, than Edwards. Edwards being a little bit younger, coming off of 2 really good seasons. I think some teams really might throw some money at him if he's available. So I think there are a second wave of guards that are available. And same thing with center, guys like Tyler Biadasz just getting released from the Commanders who could be out there and not break the bank, but they're good, dependable players. And you just don't want to have massive holes on the offensive line. So I think free agency, there are some options. And then from a draft perspective, we'll see. I mean, Venga Ioane from Penn State, he might go top 15 to 20. Emmanuel Pregnon from Oregon could be there and available in the back end of the first. I do think there are plug-and-play guards available at the back end, but we'll see. Without the tackles, without the premium positions, you might see teams in the top 15 having the same conversation, say, let me just get our guard and we'll be happy about that.
Yeah, so the Bills are looking at Connor McGovern, who they got as a young player as a guard, and he moved down to center after 1 year when they released Mitch Morris. And I've kind of contended that a center, in some ways, is a little more important to the mechanics of your offense than a guard is, because the center's got a voice. I mean, he's making line calls. He's got a relationship with with your franchise quarterback. He's usually the guy holding the clicker in the film room, the whole thing, right? Is it hard to replace that kind of guy in an offense rather than a guard who, like you say, plug and play, and the propensity for those guys to be, they're hanging around, they're available, whether they're good or not. Maybe the environment has as much to say about that as the guy's ability. What are your thoughts about keeping Connor McGovern as a center in front of a franchise quarterback and David Edwards as a guard? Is there one that you like better than the other? Not those guys personally, but as a general rule, the center with the voice or the guard who has to get out and get to the edge?
I think there's definitely something to the known commodity of the center and
right.
The relationship, everything that you're talking about. And then in this particular instance, I just think Edwards is going to be more coveted on the market, given his age and the fact that, he's peaking his last couple of years. So I would rather go in, hey, re-sign McGovern, and okay, now we've got one spot to fill, right? When you're talking about the offensive line, on our show, Check the Mic, we use the phrase creep back toward average all the time. That's how we encourage teams with bad offensive lines. Just don't have question marks as much as possible. You fill one of those question marks, I'm all in on the center, because it is one of those things that then teams have to try to glean that from meetings, from 30 visits. If you're talking about, hey, Jake Slaughter from Florida, we have no idea how he's going to operate at the line of scrimmage. But you can see him physically, but it's really difficult to project that. So I like the known commodity of McGovern. And then, okay, between free agency and the draft, fill one spot at left guard. I think that's a much better way to go if you're Buffalo.
Yeah, the problem is the Bills, you're right, the continuity of their offensive line room has been highly underrated. They also have Cedric Van Pran Granger, who played for 4 years at Georgia, practiced 2 national champions, the whole thing. The guy's got a resume that's taller than me, and he's standing there waiting for his chance. We don't know what they think about him. We haven't seen him play.
Yeah.
That may be the extra degree of difficulty in deciphering which position that the Bills feel is most crucial, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't know what the internal evaluations are. I like to, from the outside, though, I like to not have questions, right? I think when the Bills going into the draft last year with one potential starting spot, which was corner, and then they happen to fill it with Maxwell Hairston, I think that's the way to go. Like, you want to be able to, someone used the phrase last week in Indy to me, you'd love to have a team that could play a game in mid-March or late March, right? You'd love to have your starting group set, and then you go into the draft without major needs, without having to force a pick. So that's still the ideal for me. If that is an internal replacement, that's fine. But I'm just trying to minimize risk and uncertainty as much as possible next week in particular when it comes to free agency.
I like the point about Cedric Van Pran Granger, because I guess we're going to find out in the draft how much they like him, because if you draft a guy in that position, that's putting a roadblock in front of this young guy. Meanwhile, if they go out and sign a veteran to a little bit, smaller deal, stopgap kind of thing, let the younger guy kind of get some reps under his belt, then that kind of makes sense. You do a podcast, Steve, and I noticed I came along it said that you were fixing the AFC East and you were working on the NFC East. So did you fix the Bills? Because we've been sitting around with the fan base trying to fix them now since that Denver game. Where did you land?
It's one of our favorite things we do every year. We go team by team. We used to call it fixing every team in 5 minutes, and it was because we were just going to fly through some moves, but we're long-winded. So we do about 15 to 20 minutes per team, talk free agents, talk draft. We talked a lot about X receiver. I know that's a thing to talk about, and I'm warming to the idea of a 1 to 2 year Mike Evans type of deal. I know that's a splashy type of move that every fan base really loves, but I think that could work here. Given the look, I don't think they've neglected Josh Allen by not giving him playmakers. Some of the narrative is, he's dragging these, postal workers to 30 points a game. I mean, they've got maybe the best group of interior receivers or yak-centric receivers in the NFL. When you talk Khalil Shakir, when you talk what Dalton Kincaid did last year and is capable of, you're talking what James Cook can do out of the backfield, what Ty Johnson's been able to do out of the backfield. They've got great pass catchers. They just don't have the one-on-one outside receiver since Stephon Diggs. We know that. And it's a challenge to find that guy in today's NFL. So whether it is late first round, a Denzel Boston type from Washington, or a 1 to 2 year, hey, let's go try to win a Super Bowl with Mike Evans, who can still play, who uses his body well, separates well for his size, moves well for his size, even at this point in his career. The question's going to be, he gets banged up. He has some injury issues. Does he really want to leave Tampa? I'm reading it like he does more now than he did 2-3 years ago when he re-signed with the Bucs. I think Evans would be a great fit. I know a lot of fan bases would love to have Mike Evans, but I think it actually makes sense within this offense, and he would fill the need that the Bills have on the outside.
What are some, and I know this is ever changing because even today, like Marshawn Lattimore got released today from Washington, and there's some money spots, and these guys, the free agent list is changing all the time because salary cap and, cap compliance and all that is a part of it. What are some of your top names, guys you think, and a guy like Mike Evans who still might have some gas in the tank, or maybe a young player who got released for whatever reason because a team just lost patience because he had some nagging injuries, whatever. What are your top names out there that you think are going to explode into any team they sign with?
Either as free agents or potential cut candidates.
Either one, because if they're cut candidates, I want to know who's cutting them and what they're going to do with their new team. I mean, if there's a guy out there you think is a cut candidate that's going to be sought after, who is it?
I like the way Over the Cap, they have a predictive cut candidate list, and there are some fascinating names on there. Guys like Calvin Ridley, if he's out in Tennessee, look, anybody who's getting cut is going to come with question marks. But then I think if you're Buffalo, you're kind of chasing that upside, right? And if Ridley, he's always better as part of a committee. He's never been good as the number one. But Buffalo, they don't need 150 target receiver. It's just an outside receiver who in certain games is going to go 8 for 150 once in a while. Not every week, but when all the attention is in the middle of the field. Because, Buffalo's built to beat teams like Kansas City. They might not be built to beat a team like Denver, who has great corners on the outside. I like a guy like Calvin Ridley, who I don't want in Tennessee. If I'm the Titans, I got to get younger, but Ridley could be a good guy on the outside if he comes available. I look at the second wave of edge rushers. It's less sexy because I'd love to have an impact play. I'd love to have Odafe Owe if I'm the Bills opposite Greg Rousseau. But I think there's a really good group of the A.J. Epinesa types as he hits free agency. You replace with Arnold Ebiketie, Arden Key, Joseph Asai. Those are guys that, look, those are the types of players you look back and say, hey, we won a Super Bowl this year. Great contribution from Arden Key or from Joseph Asai and that 2/3 edge rush role. So I think those are the types of free agents that will be available. If there's a splashy move, maybe it's Evans, but I really like the second wave of free agency in this group.
Steve, when we were in Indianapolis, the NFL, the league announced the salary cap, where it would be. It was at I think just a shade over $301 million. That's up $22 million from last season. I'm wondering, as you went around and kind of talked to different, movers and shakers in the league and front offices around the NFL, what their thought was on that number.
So I think we're going to see some crazy numbers next week. It happens every year in free agency when this player that is like a fringe starter or, average starter. And I use that's not a knock. That's an endearing term. These are great football players in the NFL, but, relative to their peers, and they're going to be making a ton of money. I mean, even last year, Will Fries makes $18 million a year at guard. He'd only had one full season essentially as a starter, former 7th-round pick. So the money has to go somewhere. The other thing to just keep an eye on, because NFL people, it's just a business thing. It's so relational. You want to work with people that you've worked with before. That's all business. But especially in the NFL, coaches love players that they've coached previously. With 10 coaching changes this year, I think you could see an incredible amount of movement where a new coach comes in, doesn't see the fit for a player, but his old coach is somewhere else. He sees the fit for a player. We might see some wild movement when it comes to trades, unexpected releases. So free agent lists are very fluid because all the other movement that comes with a third of the league almost making coaching changes. So that's where I think a lot of the player movement could be crazy. And then that money in the salary cap has to go somewhere. So there'll be some, quote, overpays coming up here next week.
Well, I know you were at the Combine last week, and we were down there as well, and it's the mecca for the NFL over that course, the course of that week, and it always is. But I've also heard some rumblings, like you said, and it's starting to change. Players aren't as enamored with being a part of it. They're starting to make business decisions. They're starting to come out of college a little bit more well-funded by their NIL money. I mean, they don't have, they're not really scraping around. Some of them are going to take pay cuts for the first time in history, right? I mean, because they're going to be a low draft pick in the NFL, and they were a star college. The whole thing. Is there a chance that the NFL Combine ever goes away or it becomes something almost unrecognizable? Because really, we hear a lot about how important the medicals are. Ain't nobody televising the medicals,
Right. Well, so there's two sides of it. I think the players are realizing, hey, I'm not going to do anything to affect my own stock, right? If you think I'm a 4-4 player and I run 4-5, and it's crazy how that messes with your brain, right? The difference between a 4-4-9 and a 4-5-1 completely changes your perception about a player. We're all humans and we're all affected by that. So players are taking that step to say, I'm not going to do anything to negatively affect my draft position. But teams are working at it from the other side, too. They have more data than ever. They have game data, computer vision technology and software to track game speed. They don't have the chips in the shoulder pads that they have in the NFL. They don't have that in college right now. But almost every team has some source of in-game speed, max speeds, change of direction information. So there are big data sources that are already tracking these things. So what teams are trying to do is they're scrambling to say, can we predict a guy's 40 time? And if we can, I don't care if he doesn't run. We've got his game speed. If we could already predict it off of game film. So teams are already preparing for fewer and fewer workouts, and then players are working out less and less. So yeah, it might come to a head. I saw people predicting, hey, 10 years from now, this doesn't happen. It's absolutely a possibility. I'd be sad. That's a lot of stakes. It's a lot of interactions. It's a lot of walking around, seeing GMs. There's
a fun
fights
week.
at Starbucks. You never know what's going to happen out there. I'm going to miss it, but it could go away.
The shrimp cocktail.
Right?
I mean, it's what are we going
to
do with that?
Yeah, it's true because it's a huge social gathering for the league and for these coaches and for staffs. You walk into, I'm serious, you walk into a restaurant and there's like 5 head coaches sitting at a table. And
Jerry Jones's Cowboys bus
so,
is sitting right on one of the main streets in the city.
So it's a real different environment and a lot of conversations are had in person that affect transactions. GMs cross paths with each other and strike up a conversation. It happens constantly. Yeah, that's
Well,
it's,
legal tampering starts Monday, but look, we were all at the hotels. We saw everybody talking. We know
Yeah.
there's some discussions going on a couple weeks early.
good stuff. Steve Palazzolo, thanks for coming on 33rd Team, and thanks also for your Check the Mic podcast. You and Sam Monson, appreciate you being on with us. Thanks for spending some time.
Of course. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.